this new year?
Yes, I'm a super scout, right? Like, I like to be prepared. So I was prepared for sort of the lead up to Christmas, but it was only my second Christmas in business. So I based it on the kind of Christmas before. And I looked at my figures. I thought it might be maybe 300% busier, which is great, right? It wasn't 300% busier. And this is not a complaint. There was days and weeks where it was 1,000% busier, which is
Wow.
wonderful. Absolutely bloody wonderful. But I wasn't prepared enough social media wise. So I didn't have a social media plan. So there was days when I just was like, oh, like, oh, here's something I did, like, and it just wasn't planned. Next year, even if I don't know how busy it's going to be, I would rather have stock left over in January than go, God, I need to package these coasters, and it just being a bit miserable. There was a few moments, not when the orders were coming in. That's beautiful, man. You're like, yay, I love this. In fact, January is quite sad for the reason that it's not the same. I mean, I've still been quite busy. It's been weird, but it's not December or November. And then you feel a bit depressed, but that's fine. But there was a few points where it was like 4:00 in the morning and I was packaging things up. And I did think, oh God, this is awful. And I don't want to ever think that, because if somebody's ordering something, that's the biggest privilege, like, there's plenty of people they could order from. So super prep, never mind just being like my regular scout self, which is pretty prepared. I am going to be like so prepared.
I think what Kat said is good advice to try and plan, but I think this year, well, last year has shown us, if anything, that plans are going to change, that you have to be able to adapt, that you may think that you have everything perfectly planned out, but then all of a sudden a global pandemic hits and you need to rethink your plans anyways. So that's quite an interesting one on being prepared, as prepared as you can possibly be, but still learning to adapt when the time comes. My very last guest for part 2 of Pandemic Perspectives is Dana. Dana works under the name Diversity Dana, but interestingly enough, when I first met Dana at the start of lockdown, Dana's business was actually Dana the Trainer. So that will give you a little clue as to how she adapted her business, and the unexpected positive that came when she made that change and started doing things a little bit differently. Hi, Dana. How has your 2020 treated you?
It has been unexpected, is the word that I would say. I'm not going to jump on the bandwagon of, oh my God, 2020 is awful and I'm glad to see the back of it. Because actually, for me, there were lots of lessons and lots of surprises that I wasn't quite quite expecting in the year, hence the word unexpected, right? So, I do face-to-face training mostly, or I did. Most of my work was face-to-face or on client site before this year. And usually that meant full days, right, away from home. What 2020 has brought to me is a sense of balance and that things could be different. So now I'm able to work from home. Things are shorter. I can mix in business and family better now that things have moved online and I don't have to leave home to go to work. So from that sense, it has been an unexpected pleasure this year. And I realized that maybe this is what I was looking for all along, but it was never a possibility before now because, of course, everything was as it was. And this whole working from home wasn't really an option. People were used to what they were used to, and now we were forced to change. So it's been an interesting year. I think I've definitely adapted now, and it definitely wasn't as horrible as I thought it was going to be back in March when everything was getting cancelled and it seemed like the end of the world. Unexpected, a bit of a blessing, and maybe that little forcing us to change and see the world differently has been a good thing amidst all of the not so good things that have happened in 2020.
That is great perspective. And I think that's really interesting what you said about kind of finding a bit of a better balance between work and life. And I think this pandemic has made a lot of people stop and think that way, because the difference in working from home, or for you learning to deliver your services in a different way so that you didn't have that commute, or you weren't having to be out for an 8 or 9 or a 10-hour day, it is a big change. And are you kind of feeling then, like, even when things return to some kind of a normal, obviously we don't know when that will be, but are you thinking that you'll still stick with a lot of online training as well and kind of keep using these?
I try to do as much online as possible, but I think I've also learned maybe shorter sessions are the way to go. So even if things go back to being in person, I'm not sure about an 8-hour day of face-to-face learning anymore. Maybe we could do something a little bit more bite-sized, right? Because bite-sized has been being equally effective. So perhaps that's something to look at as well instead.
I like it. Again, very interesting, because you're right. I think maybe before the pandemic, we all just got into habits, and it was kind of like, this is the way I work. This is the way things are done. A full day training session, it's always face to face, whatever. And then all of a sudden 2020 throws chaos at you, and you go, right, I need to find a new way. And now you found a new way and it works. And actually maybe it works better than what you have.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. And also in a face-to-face session, I think people feel intimidated about asking questions out loud in front of a group of people they don't really know. There's something about the comfort of being in your own space and being able to ask a private chat message and be anonymous in that sense that I think has made people braver and even more outspoken and participative than they normally would have been. So that's been an interesting change as well.
That's not something I would have thought of, but you're right, especially if you are doing, the training that you're doing is content that probably a lot of people would feel a little bit intimidated to ask a question.
Yeah. And now they don't, because it could just be me and them in a private chat message, and no one has to know they asked that question. They don't have to feel bad about it or guilty about it or anything like that. It just works.
Love it. Dana, that was perfect. I knew you would have something good to say. Oh, that's such a good one though, because you're right. I think a lot of people at the beginning panicked and then went like, oh my, like, how am I going to figure out a way to work? And then they tried something new, which was scary at first and took a while to figure out, and fair enough. But now, like, that's actually better for them. I mean, not having a commute and not having to work really long days, or even having the flexibility to do like 2 short sessions in a day instead of one 8-hour one. I mean, it changes the life. Yeah.
It's been pretty
good. Well, I'm so glad. I'm glad that it's all worked out so good. It seems like you're doing awesome stuff and stuff that you're really excited about, which is great.
Exactly.
So Dana, before I let you go, I know you've kind of given us some lessons learned, or a lot of perspective anyways, on 2020, but is there anything that really sticks out in your mind as a lesson that you want to carry through to the new year?
My biggest lesson that I've taken away from 2020 is that you should keep showing up as a small business owner. Keep showing people what you do. Keep putting your stuff out there. It might seem at first like no one's listening and you're screaming into the void, but actually people are listening and paying attention, and they do remember you and come back. So in 2021, that's what I'm going to do. Keep showing up, keep telling people what I'm doing, and keep going. Even if, it doesn't feel like it in the moment, it does pay off eventually.
Now that we are coming to the end of this podcast episode, this 2-part podcast episode, I think in putting it together, and for those of you who listen to the full thing, it's probably quite clear that a lot of us came to the same conclusions. A lot of us learned the same lessons and are sitting here with very similar perspectives on 2020 and what we learned from it. I think everybody's experience was different. Obviously, you know, as much as we were all in the same storm, we were in very different boats. And, you know, some of us had to contend with having small children at home or having older children at home that we had to try and homeschool. Some of our businesses got busier than ever, and made us busier than ever. For others, it was a real struggle to bring enough work in the door. So we certainly had different experiences, but I think we all learned very similar things this year. And, you know, in looking back, there were so many themes that came across, people speaking about having a better work-life balance, thinking about the way that they wanted their life to look and their work life to look, thinking about the pressures that we put on ourselves and how, you know, we often assume that other people are expecting certain things of us, but actually when it comes down to it, we were putting those pressures on ourselves. Another sort of recurring theme through all of it is the need to stop and take a break. And it's amazing to me how many small business owners didn't give themselves a break before, or at least didn't give themselves a guilt-free break, and I mean myself included, so I don't know why I'm so surprised by that. But yeah, I think a lot of us were sort of forced to take a break that we maybe wouldn't have given ourselves, or those of us that you know, that were forced to stop working, or had, you know, a lot of service-based businesses that had their bookings cut way down because of what was going on, and had months where they weren't really able to work at all on their physical craft. And that gave us time to sort of reflect on all of these things, like the work-life balance and, you know, the pressures that we were putting on ourselves. And a few people also mentioned getting creative just for being, you know, just for the sake of being creative. And I think that's a really important one, because for those of us in creative industries, most of us built up our businesses because we're passionate about it. So for me, with photography, it was something I was always quite interested in, the visual arts, and I got really into photography kind of in my, well, I got really into film as a teenager, and then into photography more kind of in my early 20s as well. But the fact that I was able to make a career doing something I love was amazing to me. But then somewhere along the line of building up that business, it's easy to lose sight of why you started doing it in the first place. And I know for me, I don't often make time for just being creative with my camera. You know, I did quite a bit in the first lockdown, try and document life in lockdown and what it was like trying to keep a well, at the time, 3-year-old busy all day, and, you know, what the world looked like around me and things like that. But other than that, I really hadn't taken that much time to just be creative with my camera and just get back to enjoying the art of photography. So that's a lesson that I know a lot of other creatives are taking forward into the new year. And it's kind of nice to know that as much as we all experience things differently, we have this sort of collective perspective gained from 2020 and all of the things that happened last year and all the adapting and pivoting and changing that we had to do. We all sort of learnt similar things about ourselves and about having a work-life balance as a self-employed person, and what kind of a life we want to lead moving forward. And I think perhaps the most important lesson of all, and another one that gets mentioned across the board when people talk about their experience in 2020, is just how lucky we are to have a supportive small business community across Scotland and further afield. We had somebody come on from Canada and somebody else come on from down south in England. And I think probably no matter where you are in the world, if you are lucky enough to be surrounded by a network of small business owners and freelancers, that is such a powerful thing. I think it kept us all connected during these times. We knew that other people out there could understand what we were going through, would also talk about the challenges and the bad days. And, you know, I feel like we really celebrated each other's wins and supported each other through the toughest times. And having that network of like-minded people has made all the difference this year. And as much as I would, you know, pick a face-to-face meeting over coffee or a drink or a walk in the park any day over a Zoom meeting or a FaceTime meeting. I think we're really, really lucky that this pandemic happened in a time where technology allowed us to stay so connected. And not just things like Zoom and FaceTime, but also over social media, all of the people that we were able to connect with on Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn. And those conversations that were happening, whether it was publicly or through DMs or commenting on each other's posts, I know for myself, I feel like I really built up an